So what is the this? It's always too high or too low.
All right, say something now.
Microsoft optimizes Skype for older Android devices. How exciting.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Jesus.
Yeah.
All right, say something now, Paul.
Alexa is drunk this morning.
Yeah, I saw that from Raf. First off, people in the outside world, can you hear us? Because that would be wonderful. I think they should be able to, but... And how does the audio sound on the outside world?
Sounds great here, for whatever it's worth.
James Chaplin was the only one who responded. And so did Scott. Yeah. So we're gonna I'll just describe it on the air because.
Yep.
So one person said Paul sounds echoey, but you don't sound.
No,
that's just the hollow nature of your soul.
Yep. Why don't we spend 30 minutes adjusting my audio again? No? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. See, the shenanigans of all this is, well, we'll just do it on the show because that sounds like a topic worth discussing. Let me just make sure it's recording. All right, you ready? This is going to be interesting. Here we go. It's time to rock and hopefully not crash. Oh no, I've not clicked on the right window. Damn it.
Sam's. I'm just glad it wasn't my fault for a change.
Yeah, that will mark that one down on the pages of history. Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Calamity Daily, where I've changed up everything, and I hope this all works.
I don't hear a cricket. Probably because there's a snowstorm happening.
I'm, whatever you just said, Paul. Anyways, today's show is brought to you by cloudberrylab.com, or, cloudberrylab.com/FRD. Go check them out. We'll have a little bit more about them here in a minute, but .com/FRD to be exact. But, all right, Paul. Yes. Miracast. I'm a one-man band over here. As traditional fashion would allow us to observe here. Oh no, you can see Paul because Skype.
Oh, look at that! I'm reflecting into it.
No, well, you're not reflecting.
Oh, I'm up in the corner. Yeah.
Let me kill you for a minute.
Oh wow, so am I over here? Yeah, here I am. If I put one finger up. You can also see a reflection on the tape, on the screen, really. But
yeah. So here's kind of
back in the corner. Put that away. Okay.
As always, we talk about the show being put together by duct tape. And Paul, have you heard any complaints about audio issues or anything, video
Not
quality?
That I can recall. Oh, you mean like every single day?
Yeah. Even though they're very minor in the scheme of life. I'm actually going to do a very detailed write-up about this in the near future because it's interesting how insanely difficult doing what we are doing right now is. Mm-hmm. And there has to be a better way. But so what I've done here...
Outsourcing it, maybe?
professional duct tapers.
Okay, yes.
So the problem is the audio volumes, which are difficult because mine is local going right in the machine. Yours is coming across Skype, and every day Skype, when it says, how loud is Paul going to be today, it spins a wheel, and it lands on 7 decibels one day and 3 decibels another day. And so what I did is there's a free or donationware. It's called, I think it's called Audio Mixer or something. I should get the actual name. It's very, actually relatively complex piece of software. And what you do is you can route all your audio through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually routed all the Skype audio, all the PC audio. Hopefully people heard the intro music. I don't think Paul and I did, but I can fix that later. But it gives you extremely fine-grained control over your audio. And more importantly, it gives me audio mixers, like, the little bars that ping up and down, that I can actually see. Because previously, I didn't know if the audio worked or didn't work until I went into Adobe. And every day it was like, please worked in some capacity. And you can adjust things in there. But between...
What you need is a soundboard like you see at a concert. And then, of course, like DJs use these things. You could have little fart sounds and trumpet sounds and stuff like that. You know, like a mixer board, I think it's called.
So I actually have one of those, but I don't want to use it because it's even more insanely complex to physically wire it up. Basically, this is all a software version. But the reason why I was asking on Twitter earlier if there's any way to take an old Surface Pro with a touchscreen and repurpose it, because what I'd like to do is actually just mount. Well, it's kind of hard to see. Is just mount a touchscreen right here on my desk so that I could access those audio levels. Because right now I can see it on my monitor and I can see the bars going up and down, so I know things are working. But to adjust it, I actually have to get up and walk over there. And so I know you can buy like little 8-inch screens and whatnot, but that's what I'm looking for. Because right now there's
a software solution. You can use an iPad as a second screen. And of course, if it works touch. I mean, that might not be precise enough. I'm not sure.
Does the iPad run Win32 apps, Paul?
Well, it's a remote screen, so it's, I don't know what the technology is exactly. It's probably just something over IP. I don't know. Yeah,
so that's what I'm looking to do, and we'll see how long I last before I just buy a little 8-inch screen. Because right now I just have a little numpad over here. It allows me to, just kind of pop. Why is that back?
I told you it was back. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're gonna not worry about it.
Well, when you dive into something or whatever, I'm going to walk my little butt over there because if I had a long stick, I might be able to poke the mouse and actually get there. But I'm going to be curious to see how the audio sounds this time, as opposed to everyone complaining as they traditionally do in life. But anyways, Paul, I know Microsoft had a $900 million write-down, but Snap, the makers of Snapchat, they're going to be making new glasses after doing a $40 million write-down.
Everybody wants to do hardware. This has got to be just tied to that mentality that if you're serious about the future, you have to make your own hardware. But I just do not understand why a company like Snap needs to do this. I don't get it.
That makes two of us.
Sorry, I didn't talk long enough. Sorry. Usually I just go on and on like an episode.
I was pleasantly surprised. Although the one thing I thought about earlier today, Paul, was with Surface RT. They did a write down of about 900 million, and that was like devastating. But then when you put that in comparison to phone, of 10 billion ish,
billions and billions. Yeah. Well, at the time it was bad.
No,
I feel like the Surface RT write-down is something that has negatively impacted Microsoft ever since. Like, they have been very conservative with, providing volumes of units of new devices, even as recently as this past year. I think they always look back on that as like some grave miscalculation, and we'll never do that again. But in some ways, they kind of do it over and over again because they just don't make enough, or they don't release the devices in as many markets as they should right away or whatever. So they'll get it right eventually.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. But Snap's doing that. Other things that are going on is the Xbox One Spring update that is bringing 1440p to the S and the X. Not the OG, but that will be coming here in the near future, along with some new mixer features, because that's what everyone wants.
Yeah, and if you're on the Xbox One preview program, whatever it's called, one of the faster rings, I don't know what those are called either. I happen to be on it, so I do have access to it. I have only looked at, what I need to do is compare some screenshots, and I wish you could take screenshots of the dashboard and the settings screens, but you can't. You have to use a capture card, and the capture device that I have is USB based, and it doesn't do over 1080p anyway, so I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. But I'm going to take a couple of in-game screenshots. I've already taken actually at least one just of a 1440p game, but I I've only played the one game, Call of Duty World War II. I see literally no difference at all. So presumably better quality is coming.
Paul, I love telling you when you're wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Your USB capture card, that is actually factually incorrect. I know for a fact you have another capture card.
Okay. What would that be?
The one that was used to do your old podcast at your old house, the Black Magic card.
Okay. Okay. So it would never occur to me to use that for anything other than a podcast.
But that all it is just an HDMI capture card.
Okay. I mean, I never would have.
It's okay to admit you're wrong.
No, I mean, to me, that's a dedicated device, like it's for podcasting, and it's today in a box in my cellar.
Yeah, I was going to say you're making good use of that.
Yeah, I would never have thought to bring that up for that. That never would have crossed my mind.
Paul,
But actually, that's
go ahead. I was going to say, Paul, I do have an update for you. This is so. If you remember, 2 weeks, 10 days ago, something like that, maybe 2 weeks. No, not 2 weeks. Probably last week, for all that matter. I reviewed the Kit Sound Voice One speaker. Do you remember that device? I
do. Yeah, I want to buy 2 or 3 of them for my own house. It's so beautiful.
Yes. So they contacted me and said they actually have a pricing update. What do you think it's priced at now?
So what was the original price? Like 150, 179, something like that?
Yep.
125.
180. And I'm not making that up.
So I went a little high because I assumed your point was it's not as low as it needs to be. And you're saying that they raised the price.
Yes.
And that's why they contacted you.
Yes. I had it listed in my post at $149.99, which is what it was listed for on Amazon. And they said that was the pricing has been updated and it's now $179.99.
Is the thought there that they determined if they made it a premium product, maybe more people would buy it?
I didn't go into that. I didn't ask why they felt the need to justify the price. They clearly read my review, and I said the pricing should be roughly half of what it was. But
they took no exception to any of the many complaints you made, but they took great exception to the price.
Yeah, this is going to be real embarrassing when they send me this list. Being, look how many we've sold. We've actually sold too many, and now we have to raise the price. But I suspect that is not, in fact, the case.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Does that change this from like a 1-star review to like a half a star review? How do you account for this?
I don't know because I didn't think it was a good value to begin with, and so now I think it's less of a value. Because the thing is, $180, you're $10-15 away from a Sonos One. At that point, there's no brainer. You get the Sonos speaker.
Yep, not even close.
Yep. So there you go. If you were looking to buy one of those and you waited, well, now you're going to pay roughly $30 more. And congratulations on that.
Yeah, it was probably someone who put that in their wish list. I'm going to come back to this one. It's amazing. I don't deserve good sound quality.
Oh, God. Speaking of things that deserve good sound quality, Paul, here, Microsoft probably gets a good shout out for this because they have dug the trenches themselves. Paul, does Microsoft have good... Are they good at updating firmware over Windows Update? I think they've figured out how to do this over the lifespan of Surface.
Yeah, but okay, so this story is actually a little confusing.
Yeah.
And as everyone probably understands, Intel is patching their chipsets to account for the Spectre and Meltdown security flaws. The problem is Intel doesn't have a direct relationship with basically any of their users. There are exceptions to that, like people own Intel NUC or whatever. For the most part, when you buy a PC, you buy it from some PC maker, Microsoft, Dell, HP, Lenovo, whatever. And you get firmware updates, not to be confused with Windows updates, through whatever mechanism that PC maker provides. Surface uses the Microsoft mechanism, which is Windows Update. It's actually the best way to do it. But most PC makers, HP, Dell, Lenovo, et cetera, have their own software utilities. And, for stuff like this, they could potentially start annoying you because they want you to install the stuff. It is important, but I think most people kind of ignore that stuff and never see it maybe. The first time it comes up, they shut it down. I bet a lot of people don't look at that stuff. And so Intel has released buggy versions of patches. They've released updated versions of patches. Obviously, the idea is we need to get this out to as many people as possible, as many computers as possible. How do we speed that process? And so Microsoft is assisting them. The mechanism they're using is not Windows Update. In other words, you're not going to see this in Windows Update on your Windows 10 PC as an individual. I think you should, by the way. I would really like there to be some synchronicity there. I can't understand why that couldn't happen. You know, for example, if you had an HP and HP support or whatever that software is called was offering you this firmware update, and Windows Update was offering you this firmware update. I mean, so what? When the computer reboots, the HP will see you don't need it anymore. I mean, to me, what's the problem? The Windows, it's called the Windows Update Catalog, which is the mechanism Microsoft is providing these firmware updates from, is really aimed at businesses. It's specifically aimed at businesses that want to deploy software updates to multiple PCs. The people doing this are going to understand the hardware that's in those PCs, and they're going to target the correct firmware updates to the correct PCs, semi-manually, not completely, but semi-manually, in the sense that you need to understand you have a Skylake whatever processor, which is all that they have right now. There's a couple of different versions. There's going to be versions for, you know, Broadwell and whatever the other Intel generations are called. So it's another avenue for people to get these updates, and by people I really mean pretty much corporate PCs. But honestly, in some ways, it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm glad they're doing it, but I still think we should be getting these things through Windows Update as individuals. I wish that, and that option is available to PC makers, by the way, has been for years, and you don't really see a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this plays out. Mostly, I'm more nervous that Intel said they had it right last time, and then it was rebooting and corrupting data. Hopefully, you know, fingers crossed that they've got it right this time, but we'll see.
This is just kind of a side story, but related to this. If you have a Windows S PC, a Windows 10S computer, one of the reasons we probably don't see a lot of these things is that the PC makers would have to use Windows Update to get firmware updates and chipset up, you know, like driver updates and so forth, out to the computers. All of the PC makers have their own mechanisms for the most part. And I wonder if that isn't part of the deal. I could picture Microsoft evolving their policies over time to require this, not just because they're trying to push Windows 10S, but because, frankly, it's the right thing to do. It's this type of thing needs to be delivered accurately, on time. You know, it needs to happen. And I think it's just too easy for people to avoid the PC maker utilities. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. This is mostly too because this is kind of like the first, at least that I can remember, really massively widespread issue that Microsoft just can't release just a single update and it just go patches itself. I mean,
there are going to be more versions of them too. You know, we're not done. I mean, so whatever, if you happen to be on this schedule with the Skylake, you get the right kind of chipset, you could get this thing, whatever. You are going to get new versions of this. I mean, there's no doubt of that.
Yep, absolutely. Before we dive into the next stuff, today, Cloudberry Lab, if you have not checked them out, Paul did a great review of them. We're going to have a little bit more in the coming weeks, but Cloudberry Lab, you should go check them out. It's a better way to back up your data from ransomware. The really neat thing about them, and I'm actually using it now, is that you just pick your cloud bucket, put your data there, and if the price drops somewhere else, you just move it. It's extremely simple, extremely easy to do. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD. It's genuinely a better way to back up your data and not be so reliant on a single company in the cloud space, because if they jack up that price, you can take a guess at what's going to happen to your invoice every single month. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD. Paul, I hinted at this yesterday. Here we are. Did you do your homework?
Yeah. I didn't make a list, but I know the way I want to handle it. So you're referring to, let's go through our lists of things that Microsoft has gotten right. And I would sort of add just without caveat. In other words, I said yesterday, a lot of times when you look at something that Microsoft has done, you can say, wow, this is really good, but, you know, whatever. So I'm going to try to go through my own items with two thoughts in mind. One, no but. And two, I'm going to stick to the consumer space, mostly because I cover that primarily, but also because I think it's kind of underserved in the sense that not a lot of people associate Microsoft with the consumer space.
If I would have been thinking ahead of time, I should have got a little drum roll noise.
That's okay.
But you go first, and then I will backfill with everything that you missed.
Okay. So do you want me to go through all the things I think that Microsoft gets right?
Yeah, might as well. I mean, you don't have to like dive super deep, but yeah.
No, I know.
Yep, go for it.
So a couple of things. The number one, and this is really fascinating to me, is gaming. And there are two big things here. One is Minecraft. Microsoft has not just done a good job of shepherding Minecraft forward. They have done an extraordinary job. It is a much better product than it was when they got it. Cross-compatibility, all kinds of new updates. That chemistry update that went out to education recently, astonishing. It's amazing. But even better than Minecraft to me is the Xbox One X, right? The world's first true 4K console, and literally an upgrade path for everybody. So at whatever point in time you decide to go to the Xbox One X from whatever previous Xbox you had or from a previous Xbox One, every single game you have, especially if they're Xbox One games, will be better to some degree. Even if the author of that game did nothing to improve it for the X, it will still be better. It will be faster. It will look better. Whatever. It's automatic, and to me that is astonishing. It also enabled Microsoft to take back the leadership position from a technical perspective in the console market. This is a big thing for me. Actually, I'll tie in a third one, which is Microsoft's Xbox strategy. See a lot of kind of nerdy gamer types complaining like that Microsoft doesn't have any exclusive, whatever. Microsoft is doing exactly the right thing in the gamer space. It is a pro gamer strategy. They have an incredible suite of services, including and especially including Xbox Game Pass, that just put this whole thing over the top. It's amazing. I think the stuff that Microsoft is doing in gaming is amazing, and without caveat, I think it's amazing. Looking at the other stuff, there isn't much, but I will just because it's the consumer space. But I will point out this, and I've been saying this for a long time, and it's always been true. It's still true. Office 365 for consumers, a two-version, personal for one person, one computer really is the deal there, or home for 5 people, but also up to 5 computers per person, are extraordinary values. And we can kind of go back and forth about different things like, Outlook.com premium, what happened there, and blah, blah, whatever. But Office 365 as an offering, as a way to get that software, is affordable, and it is a no-brainer. It is awesome. I think that stuff is just incredible. Products like Windows 10, obviously, there are going to be caveats there. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of bad stuff. But if you dive into some of the stuff in Windows 10, I think there are a couple of things that really stand out that are actually kind of special. One is that story remix thing. Again, we could kind of complain about like how they did it and should it be a separate app and blah, blah, whatever. But honestly, where that thing stands today, it is astonishing. It's an astonishing set of capabilities. Microsoft will never get credit for anything related to photo or video editing. I get it. This is something that I think is going to open eyes. I think it's amazing. I think people need to look at that. Windows Mixed Reality is something where I'd say, like, it's a niche thing. I get that. But as far as formalizing the acceptance of VR technology and in the future AR technology by putting it into the operating system, Microsoft has done a couple of amazing things. One, they've lowered the price of entry, and they've done that across the board. Literally every single VR solution on the planet lowered prices the second that Microsoft came to market with this. So even if you don't go the Windows route, you will pay less today for VR than you did 6 or 9 months ago.
Yep.
But the other thing they did was they lowered the bar of entry from kind of a technical perspective. VR solutions in the past required all these sensors around the room. Very complicated to set up, very expensive to set up as well. This thing brings the sensors onto the helmet. It allows you to do room sensing without having to set up all that stuff. And you can play the games or use the experiences in 2 different ways, sitting in a chair like I'm doing now, or you can define a room space where there's nothing there and you can actually walk around in it. It's pretty special. I understand that VR isn't for everybody. I get it, but it's still kind of incredible the way they did that. And then the last thing I'd just say about Windows 10 is when you look at the way the world has evolved and we've gone to mobile devices over PCs, PCs are, slowly disappearing, but they don't disappear completely. I think this is the black and white thing is, I think, one thing that a lot of people get wrong. So how do you adapt like this legacy system to this new world? I don't always agree with some of the things that they do, but one of the things that they're doing that I think is really smart is making Windows 10 better by making the mobile devices you use better. And this is something that's kind of happening in stages, but you can look at a product like Microsoft Edge, which isn't necessarily great on Windows 10, but if you do choose to use it, they make a version of that for Android and iOS that's actually pretty incredible. And it uses the underlying browser rendering engine of whatever the platform is, smart, but it brings forth all of the synchronizing and passwords, bookmarks, favorites, whatever, smart. And so they've really done a great job there within the confines of what they can do. They're not Apple. They don't own the whole stack. And yet they've still been able to duplicate a lot of that functionality, and you have to give them lots and lots of credit. The final thing I'm missing some stuff, I'm sure, but the final big bucket area here is not truly consumer, but it is also not really a business feature. It's the developer stuff that Microsoft does.
Yep.
Microsoft does not get enough credit, not just for the tools that it makes, like Visual Studio, and especially Visual Studio Code these days, the cross-platform compatibility, but for the efforts they make to be inclusive of all developers, right? And what that means is you've got this body of several millions of .NET Microsoft Stack developers who are facing the same new world I was just talking about, where the world has gone mobile. And how do you get those guys into that world while taking advantage of the skills they already have? Microsoft provides tons of functionality to allow that to happen. Xamarin is one example of getting .NET skills into the mobile space. But they also come at it from the other direction. We want to bring developers as Microsoft into the Microsoft space. How do we ease the path there? Those are the bridge technologies. Those are the efforts they make, around PWAs. The idea is that maybe you're a web developer, you're an iOS developer, you're a whatever developer, you're out elsewhere out in the world. You're a Linux guy. You need those Linux command line tools. They have WSL now. They're being inclusive in both directions. And it's still something I think that some people are a little uncomfortable with. We joke a lot about the Linux stuff, and that's unacceptable, and they used to hate Linux and all that. But this is so fundamentally right and so fundamentally awesome. I think it needs to be celebrated more than it is, and it's one of the reasons I try to cover even the small developer stuff on the site, because I just really think this stuff is amazing.
Yeah, no, you definitely knocked some of the things I had on my list. I mean, number one was gaming. I completely agree. They've done, I think Sea of Thieves, correct me if I'm wrong, is a Play Anywhere title, and I think that, I'm pretty sure it is, because I looked on my Xbox.
Yeah, I have a hard time remembering what's what anymore.
but the Play Anywhere idea is incredible that they're able to span that. I think they've done a wonderful job evolving the Xbox. We all know the story of the launch and how poorly it went, and to where it is today is a totally different beast, especially in the not only minds but in the hearts of everybody. They understand where they're going. They have done a wonderful job there. Other things that I had written down, you called out Office 365, which I do agree, but specifically for me, OneNote is perfect. It's a very rare day that I even have a small amount of hatred for OneNote. It's usually just like, come on, sync. And that's because I'm too anxious for it to wait 5 seconds to go up to the cloud and stream all my devices together. Because there's quite times I'm laying in bed thinking, oh man, we should talk about that. And I punch it in on my phone. I come to my computer tomorrow morning and it's just working. Another thing too that it's taken some time to evolve, but OneDrive is now essential to everything that I do. Everything I have of importance is now in OneDrive. And it's,
I should have mentioned that. I agree completely.
Because it's on every single device, which kind of led me down the road of, yes, mobile was a giant disaster, but given the cards that have been dealt, I think Microsoft has done a great job of making sure that their services are where their users are, which was a big initiative a couple years ago, and that has materialized exceptionally well. Edge, an interesting example, even though it's not true Edge on the phones, but they're doing that good work of syncing back and forth. Obviously, OneDrive and OneNote are all there. The other kind of one that I had, I'd be curious to see if you agree or disagree, I actually think is the store. Microsoft came, it's real easy to crap on the store, and I know I've done it many times, and I know you have as well, but Microsoft came from a world where every single Windows application was just thrown into the wind. It was on different web pages, it was not centralized, it was nowhere, and at some point this year, iTunes is going to be in the store. They've listened to feedback, they've evolved, they didn't just, plug their ears and say, hey, this is our strategy, this is what we're doing. I think they've done a good job of, I was counting the number up, I'm up to 6 apps that I use every single day that come through the store. And so I think they've done a good job there. And then their enterprise side, Azure, obviously gets 5 stars across the board. It's driving revenue like crazy and all that good stuff. And then the other thing I was going to point out that you already pointed out at the end was the subsystem for Linux that they've brought to Windows. I think is an incredible thing that would have been kind of crazy to think about even just a couple years ago, and yet here we are.
You and I have firsthand knowledge of a developer who literally can use Windows 10 because that's there.
Yeah.
Tim has said that he had to use Linux before and whatever it was, various command line tools that he relied on. And when they added that, he looked at it, he said, wow, this solves the problem. This is it. Great. But actually, it's interesting. I think you touched on something that is maybe fundamental, and maybe we could make the argument that this is the core Microsoft strength across all the stuff we just discussed, which is this notion of it's sort of OneDrive based, but you save things to the cloud and you access them from anywhere. This is not an uncommon thing these days, I get that, but one of the things that's amazing to me as a reviewer and as a writer or whatever is that I can sit here at my work computer and work on stuff. I can go over to the couch and there's a laptop, I can open it up, get right back to work on the exact same document. It's completely seamless. I don't have to wait for it to sync. It just happens. I could spend 3 weeks in Europe. I have access to everything I've ever written. That kind of thing is amazing. And they've applied it across the board to different things. It happens in gaming, which is amazing. It happens on different device types, right? It's not just Windows computers. I sort of understand. I mean, of course I understand. Like most people don't have a bunch of computers laying around the house like I do because I'm a reviewer. That's unusual. But people do buy new computers. And one of the expectations that you have in the mobile world is maybe you walk into the Apple store, the new Apple iPhone has come out, you buy the new version, they sync it for you in the store, they bring all your apps back, all your data, and that phone is newer, but it has all the stuff that you used to have. You can do that with Windows. It's amazing. It's not just on mobile devices, and not so much the apps, obviously. I mean, the apps you'd have to kind of manually install on the different devices if you have an iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet or whatever it is. But the ability to, usually through OneDrive, to access those exact same documents. And moving forward, I'm going to call them projects for lack of a term. It's kind of a combination of documents and applications through this timeline feature that's coming in Windows 10. The ability not just, it's one thing that you bring up like a bookmark or something like here's a web page I wanted to read, or here's a document I was working on. I want to do some light editing on my phone. A lot of times what you're really doing is kind of a project. Here's some web pages I was referencing. Here's the document I was writing based on some of the information in those web documents. You want to bring that whole thing up together. That's a project. I don't know what else to call it. They're working on enabling that functionality, Windows to Windows, but eventually, I think, Windows to devices as well. Devices to Windows, whatever it is. We spend a lot of time complaining, because in some ways it's deserved, about some of the baloney that goes into Windows 10 or whatever the complaint of the day might be. But there is foundational work occurring, and you are correct to note that maybe we need to call that out from time to time.
And I will end on my last favorite thing of Microsoft. It's got to be Surface. This is by far, granted, I know this is a $3,200 laptop. Easily, though, my favorite laptop ever. I've been using this thing like crazy, more so even than the old Surface Books, even more so now than the Surface Studio. I'd never had a 15-inch laptop in my life, Paul, until this thing arrived. And it's,
I don't have one, but I have the new, the 13.5 inch. I have a Surface laptop. I have the same exact thing going on with those devices. Even when there was that generation that was really buggy, the original Surface Book, and the Surface Pro 4 to a lesser degree, there was something there. Even though it was funny, like no matter how many times I got bit by it, I'd keep going back to it again. It was like this really bad relationship, but I loved it so much. And to be completely fair to Microsoft, I have experienced no problems at all with any of these new devices, including the new Surface Pro, the laptop, the new Surface Book 2. I routinely hear from people who have problems, and I have not for any of those devices. I don't mean like literally not even one problem, but the level of complaints that I got for the previous gen were so vast, there was clearly something bad going on, even without the information I have from inside Microsoft. But with this generation, it's clear that they've gotten ahead of the reliability problems. It's very clear. And so the other thing that's happened was, for whatever reason, this is kind of strange, and I think you and I both would agree that we were surprised by this, but they didn't sell as many Surface devices in the last quarter last year as we expected.
Right.
The silver lining to that, the kind of making lemonade thing I would say from that, is that what happened in the wake of that is that they now have incredible prices on these devices now. Now, granted, these are lower-end, entry-level systems, but probably good enough for a lot of people. So where the baseline for a Surface laptop before was $1,000 was really $1,299, and where the baseline for a Surface Book 2 was probably $1,500 or whatever, probably $1,299, but really $15. They brought in a Surface Pro, same basic range. It's now possible to get a laptop or a Pro, I believe, in the $750 range, $799 probably at the most. There you go. I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's within reach of every single mainstream computer user.
Right.
But what used to be a non-event for a lot of people suddenly becomes a, how can I do this? And maybe it's overdue, whatever, but I like seeing that. I think the problem with Surface always has just been it was too expensive. They're wonderful devices, but you got to get them out to, you got to be able to get them out to people. And hopefully they've made the changes now that will enable that to happen.
So there you go, folks. That's what Paul and I think are the good things. As we move on here, one of the things that we do on Friday, and this is a little bit shorter than usual, but we take a look back at the comments. And actually, on the post that I wrote about the Age of Empire stuff, somebody chimed in and actually wrote a pretty lengthy comment. I want to pull out one part, and it's actually more talking about Windows 10 in the enterprise. Now, I know we just said nice things about it, but now it's time to go back to our usual routine.
Yep. Curmudgeonly self.
Yeah. One individual named Stukes, he says, my company stopped rolling out Windows 10 Enterprise and now has restarted rolling out Windows 10 long-term servicing branch, technically long-term servicing channel, because even after having GPO, GPP, and PS scripting to remove apt, updates cause some free apps to show up randomly. After one update on my work laptop, I got Facebook pre-installed and another worker got Spotify. Why does an enterprise version even have this junk?
Yeah, it shouldn't. The Windows 10 Pro for Workstations version doesn't, interestingly. I agree. In fact, I was, I've been complaining a lot about this stuff lately. I've been complaining about stuff a lot for 5 years or whatever. It goes back to Windows 8. But yeah, I would, I wish there was like an enterprise image that would never put that stuff in. I think the way that it works is, you have like 5 slots for things that could be apps and or games, and it's semi-randomized. Maybe there are 10 items, and so you might get that stupid Disney game, you might get Spotify, you might get like a PDF thing, you might get whatever it is. And because it seems like every time I bring up a PC, it's a slightly different collection. Like you always get Candy Crush and the other Candy Crush and whatever. I personally hate that stuff is built into Windows. I would pay extra for it not to be. I mean, they're getting something for it, right? I assume that's the point of this.
Yeah.
Well, figure out what that is, and then I would pay $5 or $10 or $15 or whatever it is to never see that stuff, because all I do is uninstall it.
Yep.
It's just a waste of time.
My start menu on all my machines has no live tiles on it.
Yeah, me too.
And that's the first thing I do. Every time I update, I go see all that crap. I know which ones are new because I don't use any of them. And I go and remove them all. The other comment comes actually from friend of the show and also General Jackass Todd Clint, but he does have a good point. Paul and I both know Todd very well.
Yeah.
He says Samsung has the best on the post. Samsung has the best camera, and his comment is, and I fully agree, if it was only on Project Fi.
So this won't benefit everybody. I meant to get this written in time for today. I'm going to be gone for the afternoon. I've got kind of my wife and I are having dinner with my sister-in-law, essentially. But during the day, we're going down to Philadelphia. My wife has a work thing, so we're going to kind of, do it in one day. Of course, we picked the day there's like a snowstorm going on. Anyway, so probably tomorrow morning I have a premium post coming. It's about the fact that I pre-ordered a Samsung Galaxy S9. Now, S9 Plus. There are 2 aspects to this, right? I can review it, which I will do. And I review it for other people. I don't review it for my own personal needs. But based on my bad experiences with the Pixel 2 XL, I am looking to replace it. So if this thing works well enough, I will do so. Now, I'd written articles in the past about my primary needs when it comes to a smartphone. What they kind of broke down to was camera, job 1, and Project Fi, which I love. However, the thing about Project Fi is this. You can still use it overseas. You can just sleep it while you're not using it. So you only have to pay for it when you're using it. So if I could, I would keep the Google thing because I would need it for Project Fi. Maybe, or I could sell the Google thing, not use Project Fi, and just figure out some other kind of a low-cost international or whatever, and just use Mint or whatever service I might choose to use. I'll have to move my phone number. That will be complicated, but I'm going to go down one of 2 paths. I mean, and I, obviously, like I'm going to use this phone or I'm not. So I'm looking at this device with an eye. Well, I'm going to review it. I mean, like I said, I review it for everybody, but I'm actually reviewing it for myself. Like I'd like to get past the Pixel 2 XL. I don't mind. I love Project Fi, but I'm not in Europe most of the year, and this phone has caused so many problems. I'd like to move past it. So
yeah,
I'll write up a deeper rationale there than I just sputtered out. But that probably won't be till tomorrow morning.
Well,
and Todd is an incredible loser, by the way.
I don't know if I agree, but
I mean, he lives in Iowa, He
does. We got to cut him some slack. That we do. Oh, you got anything else for today, Paul? This was a very wholesome episode, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm just, like I said, I'm going to be gone for the afternoon, so hopefully I won't get killed on the highway. How about you?
I'm hoping you do get killed. Anyways, I do have excellent news that the driving range I go to is now no longer underwater, so I'm hoping to make a visit there this weekend. It's supposed to be sunny, not too warm, but I think it's supposed to get up in the low 50s, but warm enough.
It's still snowing. I mean, my daughter came home early from school today because it was snowing.
That's tragic.
It's unbelievable. Anyway, all right. Well, have a good weekend.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, that wraps it up for today. And today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD. And as always, thanks for tuning in and have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll be back here on Monday doing what we do on Mondays, which is usually just producing terribly put together podcasts. Have a good one. Yep.
It was a 3D Paint update we probably should have mentioned. I almost said that with a straight face.
All right. Well, you enjoy your trip or whatever.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try.
Adios.
All right. Bye.